Welcome everyone tonight to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, November 18th, 2019. We'll start off as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Times two.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. We have a full agenda tonight. We'll try to go through it as quickly as we can, and thank you all for being here. The first is we have some board and committee openings. One is we have Council on Aging opening. We have a Recreation Committee opening. Hamilton District Commission, Hamilton Historic District Commission opening.
That would be for an alternate too.
And that's for an alternate position. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
And just a minute, Richard. And then we also have a Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee opening. This is a time now. We have 3 minutes. If anybody would like to speak to anything that's not on the agenda, trash is on the agenda later on. So if anybody has anything else they'd like to bring up, this would be the time to bring it up.
I wanted to just ask if you would ask, never thought of doing that. Sorry. The Open Space Committee needs more members at large. We've got 4 at-large members. One person is out of it until September. Another person has repeatedly not been able to come. Third person, and for valid reasons, health reasons. Yeah. And another person right now has a major medical issue in his family. And one of the women that started with the board immediately resigned. So if we could get 2 or 3 more members, that would be tremendous.
For open space.
Open space.
Okay, great. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Larry Sargent, 16 Ricker Circle. It's been about 3 months since the Federal Court of Appeals has dismissed the lawsuit against the cell tower action. And I was at the meeting probably, 4 or 5 weeks ago when Everest came in to talk to the Historic District. And I don't see much going on. So I'm wondering where things stand, if you guys are pushing Everest to get construction going, because we're losing on revenue, service is not being taken care of, so I don't really understand the delay after all this time.
Thank you very much. Do you want to address?
No, I think I sent an email to Mr. Sargent a couple weeks ago. Everest has indicated to the town that they are waiting to get a final sign-off from the Mass Historic Commission, and their goal is to begin construction in the first quarter of January 2020, and it's their project, so they're the ones that have to make that decision.
So I'd like to see us push them more, because that's all about the mitigation for landscaping, which has nothing to do with start of construction. So the Historic District, their agreement of how they want to, put up trees and bushes and all that stuff should not stop the start of service. So we're the customer relative to this service. We should be in a position where we're talking to them to push them a little bit harder, I believe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see, Selectmen and Town Manager reports. Bill, you want to start off?
I've got a long agenda tonight, so I'm going to skip tonight. And
Okay,
get to the,
all right. Rosemary?
I think I'll second that.
Okay, all right, Rosemary. Sean?
Same.
Okay. I just had a couple things. We obviously we just recently recognized Veterans Day last weekend, and I think it was important to recognize the fact that not only did we obviously recognize the veterans in town, but we also recognized some of the men and women of the fire department who made a pretty historic save in our community recently, and especially with what's gone on recently in Worcester and how these men and women put their lives at risk every day. I just wanted to recognize Police Officer Keith Holleran, Fire Lieutenant Andrew Ellison, Fire Lieutenant Robert Wallace, and Alex Dale, and Firefighter Christian Hassel for being chosen. They were actually awarded and recognized by the American Legion at the breakfast last week. So I wanted to recognize that. And then real quickly, the Town Hall Building Committee committee did meet and got a report from the architects, and it looks like that everything that the Hamilton Historic District Commission had requested has been able to been included in the design work. And that looks like there won't be any additional costs. In fact, there might be some cost savings. So we're waiting to hear and get confirmation from the Hamilton Historic District Commission. That's the next meeting. That'll happen. We're hoping, if not before, the latest would be December 10th. So that's that. Joe, did you have anything?
Nope.
No.
I'm gonna do what everybody else
Okay,
does.
all right.
My town manager report will be on the website tomorrow, so.
Okay, great, thank you. There, now we have the consent agenda item, which we just have one item, which is approve the minutes for October 7th, 2019 Selectmen's meeting.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the town hall, the minutes of the meeting, October 7th, 2019, for the Hamilton Board of Selectmen, and those are the minutes of the meeting.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, all right. Excellent. Here's something we really look forward to. This is a presentation of the citation to Sergeant Karen Wallace. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board of Selectmen. Thank you for having me here today. To do this justice, I would like to have the Asadorian family come up. So Nick, Margaret, Thomas, and Big Brother David. Keep swinging it, Margaret.
Yeah.
You can come right over here.
Sweet.
Oh, she's cute. Sound asleep.
Mr. Chairman, it is a pleasure to come before you and the board to honor a member of the Hamilton Police Department. And for this, I really need the true person to be honored is Sergeant Karen Wallace. So if I could ask her to come forward, please.
Where is she?
Stand right here. On August 30th, 2019, at approximately 8:37 p.m., the Hamilton Communications Center received a 911 call from a resident at 8 Hatfield Road who stated that his wife is going into labor and would not make it to the hospital. Sergeant Wallace, along with Officer Jerome and Officer Cross, responded to the residents. Upon arrival, Sergeant Wallace retrieved the medical bag from the cruiser and entered the residence. Immediately upon entering, officers could hear the screams of a woman and were directed to the first floor bathroom.
To say that.
What was in the report, Margaret? Sergeant Wallace was able to open the door and see the expecting mother laying on the bathroom floor. Due to the limited size of the bathroom and with the expecting mother up against the door, Sergeant Wallace literally squeezed her way into the bathroom to assess the situation. Now, Margaret showed me the bathroom. It was a small bathroom. She recently sold the house, but it was a small bathroom. Upon entering the bathroom, Sergeant Wallace observed the crowning of the infant's head. Sergeant Wallace immediately supported the head, removed the umbilical cord, and together with the mother, delivered the baby on the bathroom floor. After delivery, Sergeant Wallace conducted post-delivery care for the child and the mother until the arrival of the paramedics. Sergeant Wallace is to be commended for her actions and awarded the Medal for Outstanding Service. The actions of Sergeant Wallace are in keeping with the highest standards of the Hamilton Police Department, presented in hand on the 18th day of November 2019. Congratulations. Now, I did tell you that, and I've got to say this myself and Sergeant Wallace, a little joke. So Sergeant Wallace has announced that she's thinking about retiring in July. So I said, well, if you do retire, you can always be a midwife. So. And I've been a police officer going on 37 years. We've had two officers, Sergeant Wallace and Officer Drama, deliver babies in the town of Hamilton. I've
That's
never
her
seen
second
that
one.
in 37 years. So
That's
you
her
were
second
in good
baby
hands
that
with
she's
Sergeant
delivered. It's
Wallace.
amazing.
Sarah, here's your award.
I heard that call come in.
And here is your awards, your medals that you shall wear on your uniform, showing that what you did today. And before we leave, to the big brother.
Oh.
So this is yours. This is a challenge coin with our badge on it, so that's yours.
Whoa.
And I also am going to give you a patch, because you have a tremendous responsibility now, because you're a big brother, right?
Oh my
So you
God,
have
he's so
the
cute.
little one, right? All right, and this is a badge for you to wear. So that's yours.
What's that?
And I'm gonna give these to Mom, so she can give these to Thomas when he gets a little older, okay?
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
We're trying.
Yeah, no,
We're gonna sneak out before you.
Yes, of course, of course. Thank you so much for coming.
Keep handing stuff out, she may have another kid.
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
That's so sweet. Bye-bye. Thank you for coming. Aw. Aw. Cute. So cute. That
you.
big brother, he's very sweet.
Do you know that's her second baby that she's delivered on the job?
Amazing.
Is this second one?
She is a midwife, a doula. They're all the right. No, but she
Yeah,
could
we
be.
need more of that. Okay, on to the next item. This is a review of the trash collection program, discussion and vote. Joe, I think you said you wanted to start off.
Yeah, just, I'll
with
be
a little
brief.
overview.
I think we obviously have a lot of people here that want to talk to this issue this evening. So just a quick recap for folks and how we find ourselves here this evening. I think the board will remember that this board, as currently constituted, was asked to vote to change the trash collection program back on June 3rd. At the time, the board opted to let me, as the town manager, work with a small task force of select people, town staff, and a representative of the Finance and Advisory Committee and concerned citizens to see if we could identify the concerns that people have about a change in the program and make recommendations to the select board to either support the change, make a recommendation for some kind of moderation of it, or perhaps even try a different tactic entirely. It took a while, but the task force finally held a trash forum here in the Memorial Room on September 26th. Unfortunately, that was a smaller crowd than we have here tonight. We were not able to attract as many people to our discussion of the trash program that night as we've heard from in the past 4 or 5 days. The upshot of that meeting, I thought, was largely pretty positive. Some folks that left the meeting still wanting the town to change the program, not to change the program, but at least they were more understanding of the position the town is in and accepting that the current trash program is not sustainable, and that is largely due to circumstances beyond the town's control. Most of the materials from that meeting have been included at the back of the room again here for folks to review, and we've placed them back on the town website as well. Without going through all of that was discussed this evening, and there are several people here that were at that meeting that night, I would like to just mention a couple of things. The challenges facing the program are virtually all the costs associated with the trash collection program are stipulated by a small handful of providers, trash haulers, disposal sites, recyclers, and composters, who set their prices based on what is happening in the larger region and in the world around us. Those prices are tied directly to the amount of trash our community produces. And that is true whether we are discussing the solid waste, as we are here this evening, or the recycling and the composting. The only way for the town to have some small ability to control our costs is to try and divert the tonnage of our refuse into the least costly waste streams. Specifically, we need to find ways to get the weight of trash out of the expensive solid waste stream and into the less expensive recycling and composting streams. These facts do not even touch on the environmental aspects of the conversation, but there is an environmental impact to the discussion as well. Simply put, recycling and composting are far better for the environment than disposing through either landfills or incineration of solid waste. The fact is, if we do nothing and simply create the same exact amount of trash next year and the year after as we did last year, our costs would go up by about $100,000 this year and by another $30,000 the year after that. That's just to incinerate the solid waste. That does not consider any other part of the program or the environmental impacts. I've seen it said in emails and on Facebook posts these last few days that the program change is just to save money or to force residents to do something that they do not wish to do. That is simply not true. The proposal being discussed here tonight is to maintain the costs of the existing program while shifting the burden of the expected increases to those who produce more solid waste. In short, the town would continue to offer a very robust curbside collection program with weekly collection of composting recycling, which is the stuff that weighs the most and has a tendency to smell, while the remaining solid waste would be collected as part of the program every other week. On the in-between weeks, collection of solid waste would be confined to the blue bags, which could be put in the town's black bins that were given to everybody at the curbside. This does not represent the most cost-effective way to deal with the town's rising cost of trash collection. That would actually probably be pay-as-you-throw. This represents a moderated ability to continue to allow the town to offer a free solid waste collection stream and also try to help us all reduce the amount of trash we throw away by putting it in the places where it's least expensive. You know, the town's costs, and some of the materials back there include this information. Town's costs in the budget for our current year, FY '20, were over $700,000 for all of our costs associated with trash, recycling, composting. That is more than we spend on planning, on finance, on council on aging, on parks and recreation, on the DPW department or the highway department. Not collectively, but in each of those departments, we spend less in each of those departments than we do on trash. I've heard people say, well, they can just cut in other areas. It's a large piece of your budget. The only two departments that spend that much money are police and fire. When you have a big budget problem coming, what you typically do is look at your largest cost centers and find ways to contain the costs of those. That's what the Board of Selectmen is considering doing this evening. This isn't something that just came out of thin air. It's not something that hasn't been vetted. A duly appointed local committee of residents and citizen volunteers has researched this for several years. They made suggestions. We then took it and started over again. And we spent 3 or 4 months this past summer and into September looking at it again. Since then, the Waste Reduction Committee's requests have remained the same. The Finance and Advisory Committee has voted to support their request. The small group of us that met with the 10 or 12 residents that came here on September 26th have chosen to do the same thing. Mr. Chairman, if you would, I see that the chairman of the Finance and Advisory Committee is here, and I know they voted last week to support this request, so you might want to hear from them as well and see why they chose to vote the way they did.
Sure, okay. Yeah, David, would you like to come up?
Thank you and good evening. Last Wednesday, FinCom voted unanimously, all 5 members, on 2 motions relevant to tonight's topic. The first motion to recommend resumption of the every other week solid waste collection. Second motion to continue the $2.50 blue bag fee. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to set the stage at that meeting and then briefly indicate our rationale. At that meeting, there was a representative from the Waste Reduction Committee, and there was also a representative from the opposing view. Each side was given full opportunity to present their position. The proponent put forth facts and figures and data regarding trends in waste and trends in cost. The opponent did not challenge any of those figures. The opponent's rationale for opposing this initiative was threefold. One, a personal preference for every week. Secondly, a willingness to absorb whatever increased tax burden might be associated with continuing every week. And thirdly, the forecast that if this is changed to the way it was prior to September of 2016, people would violate the law. People would dump haphazardly in public areas. FinCom debated openly. We didn't think much of the opposing rationale was appropriate for public policy determinations. Please recall, if you will, the FinCom message at special town meeting regarding our foreseeably facing a systemic problem in terms of our fiscal condition, with a revenue that is not keeping pace with expenditures. The artificial ceiling of Prop 2.5 are reaching that ceiling. There's an imbalance which we have to try to come to grips with. We all have to face that. So of course we're going to try to enhance revenue, but we're also going to try to moderate costs, or at least try to stem the tide of increasing cost. And that gets us to our topic this evening. as the manager said, the fiscal 20 budget exceeds $750,000 for the entire waste program. But in terms of the solid waste, it is foreseeable that we're going to be exposed to increasing costs. The so-called tipping fee is going to be adjusted as of June next year. And we're told, I don't think we have a great deal of bargaining leverage in this regard. We're told that it's going to go up 18% the first year, from $69.50 to $82, and it's going to increase each year thereafter until 2024, when it will have increased by 34%. So, coupled with those stark figures are the facts that solid waste tonnage is increasing, even as our population is steady or decreasing. From 2013 to 2018, the tonnage increased by 17%. We can't control the per ton cost, as I indicated, and that cost is going up. But we can control tonnage. And that's what this proposal will help do. That is, we can reduce tonnage and thus reduce the cost because of the reduced tonnage. I'm told that with every week collection, people are putting compostable material in with the solid waste. That has environmental issues. It also increases tonnage. The thought is every other week may deter that trend and thus further reduce the tonnage. To the extent this recommended change increases the use of the blue bags, that has a rational basis, does it not? It's like a user fee. It's like water or utilities. People pay based upon their use. So encouraging use of the blue bags as a supplement to every other week or as a substitute in the intervening week will make sense from that user fee approach. So we think this is socially responsible and fiscally prudent, and that was the basis for our recommendation.
Great. Thank you, David. Traditionally, what we do is we go around and ask each board member for their thoughts and comments about the issue, and then we welcome those of you in the audience that would like to come up and speak.
You have the Waste Reduction Committee here, too, if you want to.
Oh, yes, and the Waste Reduction Committee is here. I apologize. Would you like to say something before we?
I would.
Thank you.
I've been quite ill recently, and I would like Andrew
Okay.
to make the presentation.
Got it.
Thank you, Gretel.
Thank you, Gretel.
Thank you, Andrew, 180 Asbury Street. As Gretel said, I'm speaking on behalf of the Waste Reduction Committee. And I think it's helpful to review the history and how we got here today. I think the town manager has reviewed a little bit of it, but I think you really need to go back to when our townwide compost program started. It started in 2012. And that's when we gave everyone in town curbside compost bins. And at the same time we started the compost program, that's when we implemented the every other week black bin pickup. The two went hand in hand. They didn't come about separately. It was part of the compost program. And the reason they were implemented together was the result of the pilot program. We had a pilot composting program. 600 households participated in it. At the end of the pilot program, Gretel surveyed a number of the participants and said, okay, now that you've been composting, how much trash are you really generating? How often do you need to use your black bin? And the overwhelming response was that people who were composting as part of that program were saying, I only at maximum need a black bin every other week, if that. And that's why the two were done hand in hand, to try to incentivize people to compost more. And if they weren't going to compost, that was fine. They could purchase the blue bag. And that's how it got started. The effect of that was quite dramatic. What happened is the trash decreased by approximately 30%. compost increased, and the town was getting more revenue from the blue bins, the blue bags. And that went on for over 4 years. We had every other week for over 4 years. And the town seemed to be doing just fine. I think there were some problems initially. People spoke to Gradle. Things somehow worked out. People found a way to do it or to purchase the blue bags. We took a look at how many blue bags people were actually purchasing back then. During the every other week, during that 4-year period, the average household was purchasing 16 blue bags. Last year, the average was 10 or 11. So there weren't significantly more blue bags purchased under the every other week. People were making it work. Then what happened is we switched from Hiltz to Casella. At the request of a number of residents, we went back at that time to every week black bin pickup. What happened was the trash increased, the composting decreased. Pretty quickly, people saw we were selling less blue bags. The Board of Selectmen, as a result, increased the cost of the blue bags so they could cover part of the, or more of the cost of the trash program. And we have a handout that's at the back of the room. I don't know if everyone's picked it up, and I don't know if the board members have it.
The board has it.
There we have
The
it.
blue bar graph. And this chart was put together by Sharon Kashida. She is the regional DEP, Department of Environmental Protection resident, and her job is to help communities with these issues. She put this together based on the tonnage that Hamilton reports into her every year. And she did it by calendar year rather than fiscal year, which we often do. But she looked at the trash tonnage from calendar year 06 through calendar year 2018. And if you look in 06, she has the tons of trash, then the tons per household, and the pounds per household. And if you look, there's a dramatic decrease in calendar year 08. There was a decrease 28.77% in our trash. What happened that year is that's the year the town went to a single black bin. So the trash decreased then. We went along the same for a few years. Then you look at calendar year 2012. There was another big decrease, 29.66%. That's when we implemented the composting program and the every other week black barrel pickup. You go along, you look at the percentages. The next time it starts to jump up is calendar year 16-17. That's when we went back to every week black barrel pickup. And if you look at those 2 years together, it comes out to about an 18% increase. So this shows vividly the trend of Hamilton managing to reduce the volume of trash, the tonnage of trash, and all of a sudden we started going in the opposite direction in 2016 when we went back to every other week. And when that happened, we were asked to take a look and come up with recommendations. And the Waste Reduction Committee looked at what other cities and towns are doing across the country. And there are many things that people are doing to try to address the increased cost of the waste programs. Some cities and towns have implemented mandatory composting. Seattle, San Francisco, the city of Cambridge is currently considering it. Some, as Joe said, use a full pay-as-you-throw program. All your trash goes out in a blue bag. 130 cities and towns in Massachusetts currently have a full pay-as-you-throw program. We looked at keeping the existing program, but raising the price of the blue bags. We looked even at some programs where people are giving residents different size trash barrels. So some people can have a small trash barrel, other people have a big trash barrel. It's done in Seattle, it's done in Brookline. People are billed quarterly, and they're billed based on the size trash barrel they use. People in Brookline told me it's an administrative nightmare, and the DEP doesn't like it. But we looked at all these ways of trying to keep our trash volumes on the way down. And the goal was really to do that, to keep the trash going down. And we thought the best way to do that was to try to increase composting. because EPA and many other studies show that 30 to 35% of what's in the residential trash stream can be composted. If people compost, they can reduce that tonnage by a third. That's why the city of Boston now is trying to figure out how to do composting pilot programs. Cities and towns are really looking at this. We're much further ahead than everyone else. We already have our green bins. We have Casella, who has a split truck, which will cost us a lot of money. We don't have to do a whole new truck hauling route in town. We're really further ahead. And when Joe was talking about the costs have really increased dramatically. And when I looked at what we were paying the last year of our every other week program with Hiltz, the total trash program then was $332,000. We're looking at where we are today. We're looking at where we're going to be in FY 25-26, which is almost $780,000. And we're also predicting, as is the state DEP, that costs will continue to increase beyond that date. Costs are increasing, and they've increased dramatically since we had Hiltz because collection costs have gone up. Those are just labor costs. The cost of disposing of our trash in the incinerators has gone up. And our recyclables, we no longer get money back from our recyclables. We've got to pay to get rid of our recyclables. Those three things over the past 4 years have caused a dramatic increase, and that's going to continue. And the reason we think that's going to continue is because the state of Massachusetts has come out with a draft 10-year waste management plan. They looked at the capacity in the state today for Massachusetts to deal with its trash. We've got 7 or 8 landfills within the next 10 years. They'll all be at capacity and will close. We have 6 or 7 incinerators. DEP is saying they are currently at capacity. Their capacity is in the 90%, but what they say is that's their practical, practically they can't take any more. They have downtime. They've got to leave a little bit of extra capacity for the ups and downs of volumes of trash that come in week after week, month after month. So our incinerators have no more capacity. Today, in Massachusetts, 22% of our trash is sent out of state. It's going to landfills in New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York State. And what they're also saying is within the next 10 years, they're going to close in New Hampshire and Vermont. We won't have that as an option. That in 10 years, the only landfill, the only place we'll have to send our trash outside of Massachusetts will be New York State, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. That's going to cause our trash, if we can't reduce it, to go up in cost. There'll be transportation costs, there'll be capacity issues. The only alternatives that DEP is saying is either we've got to export trash, we've got to build more incinerators in Massachusetts, which is very difficult from a permitting point of view, or we've got to reduce the volume of the trash we're generating. Their plan over the next 10 years is to reduce the trash in Massachusetts by 30%. Their number one goal is to do more composting. It's the easiest, most efficient, quickest way to get very heavy stuff out of our trash. And I think that we need a system that people are going to pay equitably. The more people generate in trash, the more they pay. It has to be a system that allows those costs to be absorbed going forward, because we're not going backwards anymore. Costs are only going to go up. Trash volumes are increasing year after year, and our population is going down. So when we looked at all these alternatives, we thought that the every other week, going back to every other week, would be the easiest program to implement. We thought it would not create much hardship on people. We've done it for more than 4 years. People know what it is. They're familiar with it. It will not cause an administrative burden at Town Hall or DPW. We thought it was a fair and reasonable proposal, and we still think that way.
Great. Thank you, Ann. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, as I was saying, we'll go around, ask the board for your input, and then welcome the audience input afterwards. And we just ask people to be hard on the topic and not on each other. This can be a very emotional topic. There's nobody here that's right, and there's nobody here that's wrong. We just have a very view things differently. So why don't we start off with the board first, and then, as I said, we'll welcome your input. Bill, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough decision, right? So we didn't take it lightly. We've weighed this, thought about this, done the research. I mean, in person, I've done the research, lived it, through a family of four, through, a lot of being a consumer in town and understand how to get rid of things. So we've lived it, done the research. So I think, tough decision, but tough decisions, you have to make compromises. And it's tough to make compromises sometimes that need to save money and do the right thing. So, I don't want to be redundant, but I don't want to say ditto either, but I agree with David, what Ann has said so far. Made some notes here, but, trash isn't really right. I mean, trash is, we want it to maintain as a service in town. So I think the right compromise to do is maintain the budget that we have right now. Spend that $700,000, have everybody be able to do trash every other week, do composting every week, do recycling every week. That's a good compromise. And people need to, because some people need to throw out trash every week. We allow them to do that, and they just have to pay that extra fee, that use fee. We could have gone the other way and said, pay as you throw, which I think 135 towns do. But I think this is the right compromise to do. I mean, they have done studies in Massachusetts that says that over the 50 towns that have done it, trash has been reduced. So pay as you throw does reduce trash. It's a data point. Enough data has been collected to know that it works. Trash is going up. So we're stewards of the town to sort of maintain our tax rate, and so we've been asked to challenge it. So every time we meet, we try and think about creative ways to either lower the tax rate or keep it the same. This is a creative, easy way to motivate people to compost, to reduce our trash and reduce money. So, we have to leverage our resources we have between Brickend Farms and the recycle and the composting. We're leaders of the community, leaders of the state, leaders of the nation to do this. And so we need to be recognized for this. We need to promote it. And I think that we've been proactive. We need to continue to be proactive. So this is the right step to stay ahead. I know it's a tough decision, but I'm in favor of it. And I think we've done all the right research and made the right compromise. I think this is the easiest way to make the compromise and move forward with it. So I think that's all my notes. I mean, I think our tax dollars are better spent somewhere else. I think to increase tax dollars for this, I think is a mistake. I think if we need to spend more tax dollars, I think there's other services that better need our tax dollars than paying for somebody else to throw away trash.
Great, thanks, Bill.
So my take on this is perhaps a little bit different. I've been reading the posts on Facebook, and I'm very sympathetic to the way people feel in town. There's been a strong objection because people feel it's just not something they can do. I understand people's lives are very busy. It's one more darn thing I have to think about, and I truly empathize with that. My life is as insane as anybody else's. So I thought, how could I offer helpful comments about this? And the first thing is, I remember when we first went to the every other week, it was indeed very confusing to learn about, oh my God, what goes where? The trash is coming, and it was really frustrating. It was also kind of funny in a way because I just couldn't get it. But anyhow, I just wanted to remind people that there's this great placard that was put out by the Recycling Committee, and actually I have it plastered to my kitchen wall because I forget sometimes the composting guidelines and then the recycling guidelines. And we also have the Recycling Committee, the Trash Reduction Committee, who are very willing to go to people's homes and help them and teach them how to do things. I don't disagree that it's going to be an adjustment for some people. I totally understand that. I've heard people say one of the main complaints was that there were rodents getting into the trash, and you have stinky diapers sitting in the trash. I had two baby nephews in my house who were both in diapers, so I'm very sympathetic to that. But at any point, my story is that I had birdseed in my garage, and those rotten squirrels, and I'll call them large mice, were getting into them. So what could I do? I went to Home Depot and I got one of those giant metal cans with a very tight cover, and I put vinegar around the base, and that really helped. And so there are practical things that people can do to help this. People also say, well, if we go away, the trash will be there for a month. Well, that's why we have great neighbors. I know I have a next door neighbor who goes away. Rosie, can you put out my trash? You bet I can. It's not a problem. It's what makes us a community. And so my final comment, just to summarize, is that I understand it will be an adjustment, and there are people willing to help. There are ideas that we're willing to share, and so I hope that people will go into this, should we vote for it tonight, with a positive attitude, not what you can't do, but what you can do.
Thank you, Rosie. Sean, would you like to?
I'll keep it brief. I was the only one on the board at the time that didn't want to go to every week, so my opinion stays the same. So if we switch back to every other week, I'm in favor of it. I'm a family of 4 with a dog. We would fill one kitchen trash bag in the black barrel every other week. We had kids in diapers at the time too, and we managed. Also, we have a neighbor that has they're a family of 5. They have 2 dogs, and they had 2 kids in diapers, and they seem to manage it as well. It is a bit of an adjustment. I remember when the program started, but the way we've reduced the waste and the tonnage, especially with the composting, really makes a difference. And I know there's not everybody composts in the town, and this, I hate to say this will force them into it more, but it will. And we'll get some of that tonnage back out of the waste stream going into the tipping fees, which is where we're really losing all the money with it. So.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, Darcy.
Thank you. I agree. I think we don't actually have a choice. I think being on the FinCom for the past couple years or so, I understand what David's getting at. We're bumping right up against that Proposition 2.5. If we're not careful, we're going to be in the same shoes that Wenham is standing in. And right now, they're about $1 million and counting. And they're going to have a real tough time trying to mediate that. And also, when I first started back when it first began, I think it was 06, I had a steep learning curve, and I was kind of ticked off that I had to actually think about it. And but slowly and surely over time, I got the hang of it, and now to this day, I don't need to put out a black barrel, maybe not even once a month, because most of it is just meat wrapping that I've washed. And since we don't eat as much meat anymore, it's even, I'm throwing out this much garbage every week. So if I can do it.
Right, it is a learning curve.
It is a learning curve. You just have to, it's like anything else, you got to practice to get good at it. But it's worth it, and I don't think we have a choice. I really don't. I think this is staring us in the face, and we're going to take steps.
Great, thank you.
Could I just respond to a couple of things that the select board said?
Yeah.
So one of the things that was...
You gotta let Jeff speak, though.
Oh, he always gets to speak. But if you want to go first.
No, go ahead.
Just to offer a little bit more, depth of information. You mentioned the situation in Wenham. I know because I've spoken at length with the town administrator there, and they're considering a straight pay-as-you-throw program and taking it all out of their budget. They have over $1 million deficit in their structural deficit in the way they finance their town, and they can get $400,000 roughly in savings. We're not proposing, or I'm not proposing anything, but it's not been proposed to do this as a savings measure. It's been proposed as a cost containment measure. And there was another thing I was going to say, but it doesn't matter. That's one. I think people should know. Our neighboring communities are struggling with the same issues. So.
Right, and this is, if I may add, this is kind of a compromise. We're not going to full pay-as-you-throw, and we're not doing the full increased cost for the whole community with the added tipping fees. This is a hybrid model, which is what it started as.
Well, I'm in the unenviable position here of being kind of the contrarian to all your thoughts. And first of all, I wanted to thank the Waste Reduction Committee for all your hard work. I really admire and appreciate the passion that you put into this. I guess the way I look at it is a little bit differently. I look at this as if we were starting this from scratch. Yes, I do believe pay-as-you-throw would be the fairest and most equitable way about moving forward with it. But we're not starting from scratch. We're not working in a vacuum. We pay the highest among our peers in taxes, and a part of those taxes are services that we expect from our government. And I think there are certain services that our government provides, like trash collection, that you could apply a user fee to, but there are a lot of other things that if you go down that road, you could also apply user fees to, like the number of bags of leaves that we pick up per yard. We could charge more for somebody who puts out more. We could charge more for snow plowing. If you're at the end of Tobacco Road and a longer ways down, we could charge more for snow plowing. So I think that argument, while I appreciate, and again, I think if we were starting off from scratch, makes sense. I think when we look at the role of government and some of the services that they can provide us, it doesn't always make sense to apply a straight across-the-board user fee. I think of the example of how Patton Ridge, a condominium association, came to us with, I think, about 12 units. And they were doing their trash collection independently with their own individual contractors and came to us as a government to help with that problem and asked us to include them in our trash collection so they weren't all, as individuals, responsible for doing that service on their own. And I think, again, that's why I feel like as a government, a small-town government, some of these services are our responsibility to provide to residents. I think of the cost reduction. Of course, that's important, but I think there are other things in town that we can look at that we can reduce just as much money, if not more. We own the Patton Homestead. That's costing taxpayers $90,000 a year just to hold. We have our Hamilton Development Corporation. That's costing us about $75,000 a year to maintain. So I think there are other ways to reduce costs that wouldn't impact people's daily lives in a service that they're expecting us to provide for them. So that's my opinion, and based on that, I wouldn't be able to support going to every other week. I would support maintaining the weekly pickup. So with that being said, we welcome what you all have to say from the audience. If you could keep it to 3 minutes and try not to repeat one another, that would be great, because we do have a lot to get through and we want to make sure everybody can be heard tonight. Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I can keep it to 3 minutes, but I don't have nearly as much as Ann had to say. I was the person who was the opponent at the FinCom meeting, and I'll come to that later. Right now, waste removal costs us, what, $700,000 this year?
Yes.
Okay. That amounts to $233 per household on average if there are 3,000 households. That's peanuts. Don't mess with it, please. The FY19 total black bin solid waste was 1,528 tons, $69.50 a ton. That's $106,000 and $196,196. Assume 3,000 households again. The cost is $33.40 per household per year. Again, that's peanuts.
That's just this year, though, Richard.
I understand that.
Forecasting.
We're not going further.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not going to snow you with details or go too many facts and figures. I want to keep it simple.
Go for it.
Okay, I mean, this is where we're at.
Go for it.
Okay, and if you double it, you're only up to $75 or $76. That's still peanuts. That's a year. My car payment a month is over $550 a month. No argument. I don't get what your problem is. The waste reduction, and I don't mean to be rude, but this is, the Waste Reduction Committee will give you a lot of environmental reasons, a lot of financial reasons, and took a tremendous amount of time giving you facts and figures. Mr. Wanger is right. I did not rebut them. Why? I've just rebutted the part that's important. And by the way,
You rebutted the part that's important to you.
Be
fair.
The The
part that's important-
baseline is the important thing, Joe.
The Finance
Well,
and
Joe,
Budget
excuse me
Committee
for a
felt
second.
differently?
Excuse me.
Saying,
I don't think it's appropriate for you as town manager to be butting in here.
okay.
Please, excuse me.
Really?
This,
All right,
oh, I'm
Richard,
sorry.
Again,
See, everybody's been respectful here, so.
I know, I'm trying to be respectful
I think you should be
too.
as well.
But the town manager should.
He's asked for his professional opinion based on his experience. And
Okay.
that's what I'm offering.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Just, I've asked I've asked the Waste Recycling Committee over a couple of times to stick to teaching. Do not try to force things. Do not do. First, I asked them. I'm sorry. I got to get my blood pressure down because this is just inappropriate. I asked the Waste Reduction Committee to please do 3 things that would be easy to do and would have a positive way to reduce waste. First, when you're explaining what can or cannot be done, recycled, composted, etc., explain the why. I've already talked to people at times and said that, and they say, oh, that makes it easy to remember. Can't remember why you shouldn't put the tissue paper and paper towels in recycling because it's the fibers. Who knew? Okay. Second, do workshops and post tutorials on red wigglers and composting on organic waste. Thank you, Jane Roundy, for doing what I asked. That was very nice of you. And I appreciate that. And Corinne, thank you for doing what you posted on Facebook about how you managed to get it done in your house. Thank you. I'm going to post how I do composting of leaves. I put almost none of my leaves in the collection unless I can't get the work done. And I mulch them. I have a $500 mulcher that I bought and do the work to get them mulched, and I have my own compost pile. I'm going to show people how I do it. Similar to Jane's, different from Jane's. Then third, which is what I got to, show people how to compost leaves and stuff like that, maybe taking them to people's properties, which Jane offered, and let them see how it's done. And one time, I asked this of one of the people on the committee, and that person said, well, we're volunteers, and we have families. Or most of the members work. And 3 of the members are retired. The others, I think, have no children at home. Please, that's...
Richard, if you could wrap it up.
I am
It's been
about
5
to.
minutes now.
I understand. But Ann had a tremendous amount of time, and she's wasted a lot of time. I got a lot of
on committee. She
specific
had
one-liners,
committee.
if I may. This is important.
Come on, Richard.
Okay.
Finish it up, please.
Please keep your comments down in the audience. You don't have to agree with me. I didn't make comments when you made comments.
Richard, just finish up.
Yeah, I will. Okay. Show how to compost leaves and do stuff like that. Then, dog waste, major problem. At one point in the FinCom meeting, the chair wanted me to do his job for him, and it treated me very rudely, as I might say. And I'm sorry, Joe, but that's the way it was. And I felt like I was being treated as a witness in court.
All right, stick to the topic, and if you could wrap it up,
Okay.
please.
And Jeff, I want to thank you for your support. And I'm sorry, the amount of money we're talking about here, not going to push the budget up. Not per household. Thank you. Please do not do that.
Gentleman's waiting, though.
Pete,
All right, thank you.
Peter Britton, 466 Highland Street, and owner and operator of Brick Ends Farm. First of all, I want to commend all the women that I would lovingly call eco-moms for providing out of the 100 tons a week of diverted organics that we take in the cleanest material that comes out of the green bins comes from Hamilton. So I'm very pleased with that. I'm very appreciative. I got involved in the program initially because throughout everything I do at Brick Ends Farm, I'm interested in best practices. And I consider what the Waste Reduction Committee has done, what the Hamilton town has done in electing to do the trash and composting and recycling program the way they do, it's best practices. And I'm also aware of the uncontrollable costs involved, and I would like to make an offer. And that is that I'm currently charging the town $45 a ton, which is significantly below the market rate in which diverted organics, if you can find another place to take diverted organics. And I would remind people that there's a tremendous convenience that Hamilton has, both in taking diverted organics just up the road, accepting a place for brush, and in particular accepting a place for free for people to bring their leaves, their individual households to bring their leaves. So I volunteered this service. Yes, I do charge a cost, but what I'm offering to the town is if they embrace going back to the every 2-week trash thing, to reduce my tipping fee from $45 to $40 a ton.
11%.
And that after that, we can take a look at whether or not there's, depending on our increase in people's participation, whether I can offer a carrot to continue to offer that. That will depend on, the town may be forced to mandate it or whatever. But the point is that right now, if this becomes a reality, your tipping fee will become $40 a ton. Now, I'll remind you as well, in terms of alternatives in regarding composting, the only available option up to recently would have been Rocky Hill in Saugus. As I understand it, Rocky Hill has opted no longer to accept organics from towns. So I'll just try looking around for another composting facility. And if you haven't had a chance to come and visit, we can organize a visit. I think that you'd be interested in seeing what happens at 464 Highland Street. You know, it's,
I think it's worthwhile to do it too. I mean, it's amazing to know that the stuff in the green bin within 3 months is dirt, is black gold. So it only takes 3 months. So it is worth going to.
It's an impressive
That's my offer, and I'm very pleased that the town, I think, wants to embrace best practices. Thank you.
Peter, can I ask you a question before you go?
Yes, sorry.
So we had, I don't want to say it's an issue, but we had before where the trucks were driving to wherever Casella was to weigh the tonnage and then coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
Are they weighing at your place now, or are they still driving back and then driving to you?
I think that we went through a process of looking at estimated weights as opposed to real weights, because there was a suspicion that the town was not getting a good deal on estimated weights. And I think that the determination was that you were getting a good deal on estimated weights, because finding a scale that works is just not practicable, and the truck-mounted scales are something that Casella doesn't want to invest in, and they're not reliable.
Peter, I have a quick question.
Yes.
You offered to have people come out and visit your operation. Similarly, as a way of educating folks, similarly during the forum in September, the Waste Reduction Committee had talked about finding ways to educate folks, and I think Ms. Kale had recommended that maybe videos and things like that. If we could arrange for somebody to come out and take a video, and you do a little, 10 or 15-minute video tour of Brick End Farms and ask HWCAM to run that, would you be amenable to that?
I would love that. And
We happen to have
I'm
a...
forever respectful of the home composter. because you rely on microbes that are lazy. And they operate at a temperature probably no more than 100 degrees, which is one of the reasons why meat products, for instance, this is a word I make the school groups have to remember. Thermophiles. They have to test their parents as to whether they can say thermophiles. Thermophiles are the heavy lifters of composting, and they live between 130 and 170 degrees. And if you saw the hot dogs that we received from Cayenne disappear into ash in 6 weeks.
Yum.
It's the best part of my school tour is to watch the reaction of the
And Mr. Britton, maybe you could have a conversation with Mr. Burnham. He's got a drone and take some nice footage with it. Maybe we can do a little informational promo video.
He has already done some.
Yeah,
And we'll plan on doing some more as an educational tool.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Oh, no, I haven't done anything yet. Larry Sargent, 16 Ricker Circle. So the thing I want to say first off is I take advantage of all the services, trash, recycling, composting. So I am not emotionally attached or against one or the other. The part that kind of bothered me when I first started looking into this was the lack of what I thought was some decent financial analysis. So we had the report that came out in September. I looked at it. A lot of percentages thrown around, but nobody talking about actual dollar numbers. So I took a stab at it. I believe I emailed all you folks to take a look at that as well. And, you know, the numbers I came up with, and I was hoping that if I was wrong on some of my assumptions, you guys would correct me, and I didn't really have anything that seemed to be too far off. But using the concept that Casella's contract is fixed through 2026, so hauling is not a part of this discussion about costs changing in the near term for the next 5-6 years. It's the tipping fees with Wheelabrator. That's the short-term challenge we're going to be facing in the summer of 2020. And using the numbers from that report with some projections on top of that, with the sliding scale starting at, again, the $82 per ton, going up to $93 per ton, at the current rate, we have a cost increase of about $6.42 in the first year of that contract per household per taxpayer. $6. Okay, 50 cents a month. So again, back to some other folks' positions, the financials aren't really that impactful. I know a lot of words have been thrown around about, you know, escalating costs and some kind of alarming words here, but I don't see the numbers really matching up to that. If we want to go crazy, you know, we know there was a 17% increase over the last 5 years. If you want to take that number and blow it up to 50% increase in case our trash gets totally out of control, that's $18 a year per household, per taxpayer. So again, the numbers are not so dramatic. So, you know, to some of the other points, that the cost per taxpayer for the new contract is peanuts. So I'd like to think that, you know, there's a lot of people who like the baseline service the way it is now. The cost increase for this new contract will not make a major impact at all to anybody. It's pocket change. So I'd like to keep that in mind. I definitely think the idea of more education, getting more stuff shifted into the right waste stream is great, but the positioning with some of the scary words about increases, the numbers don't support it. So I'd like you guys to make sure you really understand the actual dollar figures, not percentages, but the actual dollar figures in play here and what the impact is to each of the taxpayers. I did have one question, if I don't mind. What was the $100,000 number?
I misstated what I meant. It's not $100,000 from this year to next year. It's a larger increase. I think you're actually closer.
It's like
to right,
$17,900 for the first year of the contract, and again, if we were going crazy, it's $51,000 if we did a 50% increase. So the numbers don't match the.
I understand what you're talking about with the real numbers, and I appreciate that. It's a reasonable argument to make. Again, I'm not vested in this. This wasn't my idea. It's not something I'm proposing. Yeah. It's just up to me. I have been asked what I thought about it, so I'm trying to share that. The one thing, though, is I do pay attention a little bit more to the percentages, because as the chairman of the Finance Advisory Committee, David Wanger, said, we're held to a 2.5% increase in the way we raise taxes. So the Wheelabrator contract in year one is a lot larger than that, and in each year after that, it's a 3.25% increase. We have these types of problems throughout our budget. We have cost centers that we don't control the increase on, and they almost all escalate at more than 2.5%. So while the hard dollars aren't that much, what you wind up getting into is if you keep chasing that little bit in all these cost centers, we wind up not being able to keep up with
Yeah,
it.
I fully understand the impact across all the different areas, but again, I want a little bit more focus on the actual dollar numbers of this specific topic are not as dramatic as has been indicated. And I think that's the important thing to take out of this, is that a lot of people, if you look at the Facebook postings and such, like the baseline service the way it is. So again, some people like to drive Priuses, some people like to drive Suburbans. And again, you can't exactly control all of their compliance, if you will, but education and incentives, that's great. But again, the real numbers aren't that scary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Very much. Yes. Yes, please.
Stephen McWhorter, 18 Cunningham Drive. I was going to comment on the composting and that the metrics really don't look that good at it. We can't understand, like, where's this capacity going to go? But Peter explained where the compost was going, how it works. I think the town needs to look at that, because if we shift to that over the next 10 years in a big way, what happens if the supply dries up where we can send that? I haven't heard anything about a plan like that. I don't know, we used to have a landfill here. Maybe Peter could teach you back up where they did it there. But
Peter might be able
It
to.
creates soil. So by shifting it to the composting, it creates soil. So
Yeah.
it can then just be spread on everybody's lawns or whatever you want.
But what if Peter's not here?
Well,
You
we-
didn't talk about the capacity. If we go right to this, what would happen?
The amount of organics that we are receiving from Hamilton and Wenham is a very, very small proportion of the organics that we're taking in from other sources. And we have every intention of keeping this business going. Now, what can you say about any particular business except that this business is one that's it's profitable. There's a future here clearly, and I think that the ethos of this, people supporting this, wanting to go in this particular direction, is very strong in supporting this.
Peter, any sign that the demand for dirt or mulch is going down or going up? I mean,
We continued to deliver loam in January for projects that are ongoing. I mean, it is almost the amount of demand for our compost and our loam is almost unlimited, and we, if anything, we raise prices on a sold product just to protect ourselves from the fact that we are not a huge industry. We are a farm that knows its capacities, having the same number of employees. We're not trying to, we don't have an idea of going crazy and becoming some large business. We're here in Hamilton, and I think are able to provide a service both to, within a reasonable radius.
And that was the point, that was the question to the board. What if the whole county shifted to this model in a big way? The taxpayers, the residents, the citizens need to understand, could there be a bottleneck? Could there be a situation where Hamilton's not, and when I'm on top on the list there's...
Well, let me give you
What happens?
let me tell you what happens. I mean, we have to compete with anaerobic digesters for what happens to our organics.
Right.
We've had numerous occasions where we cannot compete. Somebody has got a waste stream that's got a lot of trash in it. For instance, the entire grocery industry has discovered that they produce half of their waste. Their organic waste is in packaged food. We cannot deal with with that. It's nothing that $500,000 couldn't cure. And those people who have invested in it, like in Waste Management in Charlestown, they take that in at $60 a ton, and they ship their product out to Greater Lawrence to turn into electricity. So.
What, 1,000 degrees or something like that?
Well, I don't know, but the point is that they are a fierce competitor, so that even if we can't cite composting facilities, which is not easy, there is a competitor that we have.
So, to the point, like to see some of that to the committee, like to see some of those metrics. What's it look like? Where's it going? What would happen? What happens with capacity?
May I make a comment about all those questions?
Yeah.
And they're great questions. Everything is in flux right now. I mean, everything is in flux right now. And we're going to be looking for leadership from the state as well as federal at some point. And I think when we get to that point, we're going to be pushing our state government to come up with some way that we can all deal with this so those questions can be answered. But I think it's coming.
Do you find them interesting, the questions? So maybe an asterisk and just,
Yeah.
you know, we need to see the
Because right
future.
now, everything's in flux.
The
It's
town
like
people-
everything's up in the
yeah.
air.
The town people can't understand what
Yeah.
you're saying until you show us where you're going or where it could go.
Yeah.
Or even cite some of the obstacles.
Yes.
Haven't
yeah.
heard the obstacles.
Yeah.
The other thing, kudos to Peter, Brickends Farms. I'm a customer for 20 years. If you want to know how to get rid of leaves, I do 3 trailer loads clean a year. When we first moved that address, I said we bagged over 100 leaves, my wife and I, when she was like pregnant.
Oh, no.
But I have a trailer now, and I've been using it for 20 years, very efficient. I can tell you how to get rid of leaves or compost them efficiently. So when we got my questions out, so I think, yeah. Oh, the only thing I wanted to say for maybe people that may be here, not here, came last time, you know, like this was 5 years ago. All I remember was some of the citizens or the taxpayers said, or residents, said that there was a capacity issue once you do this every other week program, just for the board to be aware of that.
Okay.
You know, some people, it might be 5% of the population, don't have the square footage in their homes to, you know, they did state that. So I'm not stating that, I'm just
sharing.
yeah, I don't have that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
100 bags of leaves, I wouldn't think so.
I'm Bob Curry, 713 Bay Road, and I think I've already told you our composting story, right? The 2 of us in the household, both 85, and we generate about 27 pounds of compostable stuff every week, and our trash in the big black things goes out about once every 2.5 weeks average, I'd say. I just want to assure people who are listening or viewing that it's once you get the hang of it, it's easy to do. You know, a little 3-gallon, nice-looking bin on the counter or under the counter. You clean off your plates in it. You put stuff in it. You clean out the refrigerator in it, which is always a problem. Sometimes we don't know whether to feed it or eat it. But it just works. It becomes part of the rhythm of your life, basically.
Right.
And there's just one other thing I'd like to add. I've been composting for 50 years, my own garden, and then doing this, taking advantage of this. And within a household, it's an action that models for our children a sense of responsibility for our stewardship of the earth.
Bravo.
I have 4 children. One lives in Manhattan and can't compost. The other 3 compost. And when I go, they show me their compost, and they grow vegetables organically, and it's really a neat thing. I love it.
Thanks,
Thank you, Bob. All right. Is anybody? Sure, Gretel.
There's so many things that came to my mind as we went along, but we were never trying to make the argument that it's huge financially. This is not a huge financial argument. It's to get people to compost. That was the reason we chose the area that we designed, because it worked the last time. It got people to compost, and we're hoping it will do so again. As you know, this is what the DEP is hoping the entire state will do. It has stated its goal is get 30% out of our trash stream. What is that? That's our compost. It's very simple for us because we have all the makings to do that here right now in Hamilton. I also just want to mention that I don't know if you remember the hotline that we instituted when this first went, the trash hotline. And there were all kinds of stories written about it because it was I who would get up in the morning, have 3 cups of coffee, sit back and feel good about the world, only if I felt good about the world. And then I would take all the calls that were saved for me. And it was a wonderful experience. And, you know, those people ended up some of my best friends. People who wanted to call and complain, to scream, to holler, to ask questions, and to make comments, all kinds of things. But just to have somebody there at the end of the line if they were having trouble. And we offered in-house composting coaching, or in-house coaching, or trash coaching, whatever you want to call it. And you know how many people took me up on that? 2 families. 2 families in the entire town. So, you know, I'll offer it grandiosely to anybody else who wants it, because I know very few people will take me up on it. But they will take up on the hotline. They will call. And the reason we did it was the DPW didn't want to have to take all those calls. And so I said, all right, we'll take them. So I'm hoping if you vote for this program that you'll also let me talk to the angry people.
Absolutely.
You can have 'em.
Deal.
You can have them.
But you know how long it took? It was about 2 weeks, and they all stopped. That was the end of it. It was astounding. People needed just to talk and to work things out. But it wasn't a big deal once we'd had that opportunity. So I'm delighted that you're thinking about doing this again, and I'm especially excited because this will be a model for the rest of the entire state. If we get people to compost, please make that the town policy. You are to compost, not to put your garbage in your solid waste, in your trash. No garbage in your trash. No garbage in your trash. You know, they'll learn it if they wanted to decrease the amount. But please make that clear so we can make it happen. And take advantage of Peter's offer. Good Lord, we've got it made. Nowhere could you do composting as cheap as that.
And Gretel, the comment I wanted to make about that, if people do choose to compost, the wonderful payback we get brick ends, black gold. Who doesn't want that in your garden instead of chemicals in your lawn, around your shrubs, around your trees? I had a half dead flowering cherry tree, and now people literally stop and look at it in the spring, and it's due to the
Thanks
black
to Peter.
gold. So there's a real benefit to it as well.
Thanks, Gretel.
Hi, Andrew Ellison, 46 Moynihan Road. I'm a little bit different than a lot of the other people I see in the room, and I'm guessing also probably that we're at some of these meetings. I found out about this from Facebook, which was from my wife, because I don't have Facebook, but and after that I started talking with some of the people in the circles in town that I run in, and there's a lot of unhappiness. This was taken away from us 5 years ago, I guess it was, brought back 3 years ago or something like that, and now it's going to be taken away from us again. you know, I am a 35-year-old man with a 18-month-old child at home that has an awful lot of diapers. She's a big girl. And this is going to be a significant change for my family. So that's kind of the position I'm on. But really, the reason that I wanted to come up and speak was this. I feel like this has been a decision, or a decision hasn't been made yet, but that may be very one-sided with respect to how the town actually demographic. And I know that people like me don't often participate in the goings-on of the town, but it seems to me like this could be something that, where it affects literally every taxpayer in town. Why won't we put this out and let the taxpayers vote on this, rather than make a decision for them?
I think that would be up to the citizens to do that. It wouldn't be not even that?
No,
Okay.
it's state law puts the burden on the executive branch of government, and the executive branch of government in this town is the Board of Selectmen.
We deal with trash, we deal with water
trash,
rates.
you set the policy for how to manage those types of things, and then you hire me to actually implement them and do them. So that's where it is.
I don't understand, actually. So is it
Water
not
rate-
possible to put
so
that out to the taxpayers?
It's not possible.
it's
Our
not.
town council would tell us not to do that because it goes against what the state law requires. The executive branch of government in a city, it would be a mayor, would be in charge of making this kind of decision. So to change it would be.
Wouldn't it make sense to you don't have to do a binding vote and find out what the taxpayers actually want. That would make sense to me. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, would anybody else like to say anything? All right, excellent. Yeah.
Michael Madden, 231 Highland Street. I guess first thing I'd like to say is thank you all for your time and commitment to this town. I know how difficult and how time-consuming that is. I was once part of a committee here, and I learned very, very quickly the time commitment that takes. So thank you all. I appreciate it. The second thing I want to say is my wife and I and 3 children, we moved here about 10 years ago. We love this town. There were many reasons why we moved here. Great spaces. It's a pleasure to live here. I do a lot of cycling. My wife does running. The kids love kayaking down the river. Not to mention the excellent school systems. There's a lot of great things in this town. Lastly, I'll just keep this short because a lot of folks said a lot of the things I was going to say. Excuse me. I don't just look at our board and our town just for financial reasons and making financial decisions. I think we've all recently seen Venice under floods, huge fires in California, ice melting in the glaciers, Greenland. I mean, I could go on about this. I think this is the right thing to do, and we should continue to be leaders and not followers. And I don't see this as a financial decision. I think our town has set an excellent standard. Like Gradle and Anne said earlier, we are leaders in this field, and that's why I moved here, and I'd like to continue living here because of that. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. All right, so I'll accept a motion. Somebody'd like to?
Let's see. I make a motion that we vote, or take a vote on trash collection program that we just discussed.
You gotta say one way or the other, I think, in your motion.
Okay, I make a motion that we vote aye for this trash collection program.
For every other week?
Yes, every other week,
There you go.
EOW.
Okay,
Throwing out every other week.
Second.
that should work. That's a second. All right, any further discussion?
I just had 2 questions because we didn't really discuss amongst ourselves. We sort of just
Yeah.
talked and then we went.
Sure.
But one is, when would it be go into effect? Has that been decided yet? So I don't know if they answered that or not.
I was
if we
going to
voted.
look for some input from you, and then I'd confer with Casella to find out. I'd be leaning to try to get us to start maybe January 1st. It would give us an opportunity to do a lot of, letting everybody know this is where we're going, this is the decision, and maybe get through the holidays so that people don't have to, stress about, I have to learn a whole new thing, and it's the holidays.
Right, and I think with the holiday, I'm thinking wrapping paper and all that, we should be recycling anyway, but a lot of people have things that they have more
So
trash on.
I'd look for your direction. It's, I'll work with Casella to implement it, and the Waste Reduction Committee to implement it, but I'd look for your direction on that.
Would the first of the year
I think
be-
January 15th probably makes sense. I mean, the first of the year is kind of not the right time because it's
Still
still the
crazy.
holidays. But
Yeah.
and then the second thing was that we had talked about it at one of the meetings, but didn't get back to me. But the blue bags, I don't remember it when we set the price for the blue bags, and then and then how it's being funded back because we don't see it in the revenue line in the budget. So
Yeah.
there's got to be some more discussion about that, I think,
Yeah,
too, in terms of
so-
how that gets funded.
So on the cost of the blue bags, the Waste Reduction Committee and the Finance Advisory and Finance Committee voted to keep the cost the same. I think that does make sense. And I did recently have a meeting with the folks, with a representative of the company that does the blue bags. They did a much better job of explaining the process to us. She did note that we aren't under contract with them, so that they have other clients that have a contract and that they're able to lock in their rate for blue bags. So if it'd be okay with you, I'd consider trying to bring her in, or at least getting information from her that I can share with you that will do a better job of explaining it, share it with the town. And it explains the whole circuit, but basically, we put in an order for the number of bags, they produce them and hold them, and then when the stores ask, we pay for them, and then when the stores ask for them, that money comes back to us through them. So it's.
Right, it's a little bit of a
It's a little bit of a
chasing trail.
game, but we
see that in
bake out
and we
it
see
does
that in the
back
budget as a revenue line.
It comes
does?
into the
line
fund, it
item.
goes to the
The line,
general,
okay.
it comes into the town as a general fund
It's general
revenue.
fund. Okay, all right.
Yeah, you can look it up, and there's some numbers where it's associated with it. And we had a little while too, Joe, from the vendor with some bad manufacturing of the bags a handful of years ago. I think they've remedied that now, but there was a run where you'd just open the bag and it would just be
rip, and that's
it'd just
not
be
good.
flat too. It wouldn't
Yeah,
even be a
that's
seam
not
on it.
good.
I like the idea of it being in the bin, right? Because I don't like the idea of a blue bag, but if it can be in the bin, I mean, there's some things I want to talk about further on that side. I think it'll make it easier for people than just to.
Yeah, to Bill's point, one of the things I saw online was people talking about the things getting into the bags when you just put the bag out. If we could put the bag in the barrel, and if
open that door, please.
the seller, somebody opens the barrel on the off week and sees the blue bag in it, they'll take it. You know, I maybe you have a comment.
Yeah,
on that,
no,
right?
I just wanted to warn you that there are a number of people who got rid of their green bins when we went off the air the other week. So there are people who are going to be looking for more bins, or at least trying to retrieve them.
That's true.
Tim, I'll talk
You
to
know,
Tim about getting
yeah.
more.
So talk
That's a
to
good
the
point, Graham.
DPW, find out how many we have in storage. And
I know he's got an order coming in, but I don't know for how many.
Good.
Because
Yeah, but they're going to want. I mean, I think we should let them know this is going to be your way to reduce your trash, and of course, it's our objection, our objective. So be sure everybody has one.
Good point.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, just in terms of
think they're
peanuts, we talk about peanuts, but so to not affect, if you're paying a use fee, right, to not affect somebody else's taxes, if you bought a bag every other week, it would be $65 a year. So, I mean, it's, so it's $250 you said times 26, right?
Right, and the average, I think, was
$65.
between 11 and 16
11,
bags.
16, so, which is around that $30 per household. So you're still paying, your taxes aren't going up for everybody, but you're paying that use fee. So it's not like we're asking people to pay this huge burden by throwing their trash out every week, because they still have the right to do it, and they can do it. It's just
Right, you can still put trash out every week.
every week, right?
Exactly.
All right, that was all I had.
That's it? Anybody else have any other comments? All right, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, excellent. All those opposed? All right, excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Good conversation. All right.
Thanks, Larry, I appreciate you.
Nobody showed up. Shame on these people who
Well, see, that's,
could let Richard sort of be their spokesman, which wasn't successful.
I mean, it was
I was expecting a lot.
I was expecting a lot more people,
Wait a
but
couple minutes to get out.
I'm sure there's a lot of people watching.
No.
I like Bob Curry's take on it.
It's great that he waited.
Yeah, that's a
I've never
really
weighed mine.
interesting. I have noticed how
The chairman
heavy
can
it is.
declare.
My
five
barrel
minutes.
is-
How about we take a 2-minute
2-minute
break?
recess.
I need
All
more
right,
time.
2-minute break.
Poor Mary Alice, you need a break.
Hotline. You think Randall will do a hotline? Jeff?
What's that?
Do you think Randall will do the hotline?
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
I don't want to know what's goes on that. Oh, and thank you for the. You don't want to stick around and talk about anything? Thank you so much.
You gotta clear the room now.
Yeah. Isn't it all that talk on Facebook? Hardly anybody came.
Shame on them.
Huh?
Shame on them.
No, I know, exactly. All those people. It's amazing to me. Yeah.
$65 a year. Your taxes go $65 a year, you pay $65 a year.
Right. Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Oh, I better give this to
Residents? They like try to.
I signed this. Oh,
Kidding me? I'm so careful.
I know, huh?
How are you?
Bill Olson. Ms. Olson.
Oh, really? Oh,
Oops.
funny.
I
thought that was
apologize if
gonna be rougher.
I did too, actually. I apologize if I was a little abrupt.
Oh,
with
no,
Richard.
no.
I
It's-
wasn't.
Well, I wasn't sure, because I know
Hey,
there are
Jay.
some things that we
How you doing?
have to do, and then there are
Long
other things
time.
that people.
Good.
But you know what?
Good to
They
see you
really
too.
want to.
Good to see you.
Ah,
man.
The town council tells us they can't influence it.
Right.
You can't put, it'd be the same thing like, well, I don't want you to raise our water rates, put it before the voters. Every
Yeah,
time
I
you
know.
put that before
I
the
know.
voters, they're gonna say no.
I know. Then no water
So-
for you.
So it's not, there's
but-
not really anything we can do
Yes.
about that,
Yep.
so.
Yep.
I-
And everything
So everything good
is
with
still
you?
moving on.
Yeah.
It's all all moving pieces. We don't know what the state, how the state's going to
The state,
incentivize.
I think it's
think they're
telling
gonna-
that the state has a 10-year plan to reduce the,
Yes.
because they know there's a problem that they can't
Right,
meet.
right.
And, so,
Yep.
you know,
I wish they were a little more conscientious about it.
but if I offended you, if I offended anybody, by the way, I spoke to Mr. Boroff, that's not what I intended. I was trying to keep my composure, but,
He can be challenging.
I wasn't trying to engage him personally, but then he said, well, he didn't think it was right for me to speak.
I
Oh,
know.
really?
It's like, dude,
Okay.
dude.
All right. Oh, okay.
Cool.
I thought that's what they paid me for.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm wrong.
Cool. For real estate, is most of your business?
It's okay.
Oh, yes, I think he'll probably come around again and.
I've been very friendly with him
Yes, I
my
have
entire
too.
year. And I actually enjoy Richard in a lot of ways.
Yes, me
He and I
too.
happen to disagree on this topic.
Yes,
All there
yeah,
is to it.
yeah.
And as I told him, I don't make the decision, you guys are gonna make that decision, and then
Yeah.
what happens, I'll do, so.
Yep.
All right.
Now we're back to regular schedule.
I didn't have dinner yet, so.
All right.
I forgot.
Thanks, Jay.
Jay.
Bye, Jay. Bye.
I didn't have dinner yet, so. She gave me that. I'm gonna get hangry here pretty soon.
What's that?
I'm gonna get I didn't have dinner. I'm gonna get hangry here pretty
Oh,
soon.
okay.
I love that he's gonna give us this 11% off on that.
That's great.
Is that what it is, 11%?
Yeah.
You're gonna drop from 45 to $40, I'll take advantage of that, that's fine.
That's awesome.
Bucks.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
you know?
And hopefully it'll be more as we double our.
I mean,
crop.
the funny thing is, yeah, we might wind up paying him the same amount or even a little more money, but as far as a percentage of our over bill, he'll get more and Willowbrook will get less. I don't mind that.
Yeah, I know.
I don't mind that.
No.
Now it's just the cool kids who are here.
Yep.
He's our ever faithful audience member.
I know,
Duke,
it's
yeah.
great. I'm glad we have at least one.
Isn't that amazing, Joe? All those people on Facebook?
What's that?
All those people on Facebook?
Nobody can.
Nobody can. Isn't that amazing?
One of the things that I think about Facebook and social media in general is that the anonymity of
Yeah.
it allows people to say things and
Yeah.
act in ways that they wouldn't do if they were in person.
Yeah.
So,
It's fascinating.
I always kind of,
And you don't want to take your direction from what you see on Facebook. Never, never.
I can't remember who it was, but in sports, there's that old story about one of the major league coaches saying, you know, if I listen to the people
Yep.
in the stands, pretty soon I'll be sitting with them. You know, I think it might have been Don Zimmer for the Red Sox. He was asked, well, you know, the fans think that you were crazy for doing this, and he said, if I listen to all the people in the stands, pretty soon I'll be sitting with them. And
I have a son who's
just
wonderful
learned
at
and
doing the
listened and
trash.
I
Yeah, that's how-
compost everything.
Oh, that
all
was
that
good.
60 or 70 emails that we've got in the last 5 days, that's how
That
those
was
people are right now.
really good.
They're feeling like you
I
did
know how
all
they
those years ago, and now.
I do.
You know,
All
I know
right.
there'll be some
We ready to
backlash.
get going so we can get done?
I certainly am.
Okay.
I feel like we're becoming a really good team, don't you?
Are you ready, HW Can? All right,
There you
cool.
go. All right.
Thank you. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your patience. Next item on the agenda is the adopt a Chapter 91 limits discussion and vote.
So we shared with you tonight the language. Obviously, the Chapter 91 program is a program here in Hamilton to allow certain qualifying seniors to have an exemption from their from their real estate tax based on their income and age. It was originally passed by the town meeting in 2010 and then renewed in 2013. The question that we have before you tonight is to confirm or amend the exemption age, which has been 65 for the last number of years. There's an opportunity, if you'd like, to make a recommendation to continue that at 65 or change it to something different.
Is there a best practices in the area?
We found that we've had about 39 or so applicants that qualified at this age range the last several years, and that's been about what we were able to support within the budget as far as what we have in the account for an overlay in the assessor's budget line item. So the taxes that are abated off are picked up in the overlay account, so, you know, we've been able to manage that at this age limit, so.
Some towns do 70, I know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is one that we lowered a handful of years ago, or this is one that we've lowered it, right? I think before it was a little bit higher, and then, I think when it was first on the board, we discussed it, and then we had another vote on it a year or so ago. So I would say keep it what it is.
I feel like 65 is a good number.
All right.
So if there's no more discussion, I'll make a motion.
Sure.
I move that we adopt or maintain our current Chapter 91 limits.
Second?
Any further discussion?
No.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, let's see, the next item is the review community projects manager.
All right, so in your package, you should have a job description that's been vetted. It hasn't been completely amended. I had some comments from the Finance and Advisory Committee that'd like me to add some language, looking for some, a person with some ability in commercial development or commercial economic development. This is a request of mine, working with the finance director and recognizing some savings that we have in the current fiscal year based on staff changes that were made. We've obviously lost some people to retirement. We've replaced them with folks who make a little less money. So a couple of other kind of budget saving measures. We believe that we can turn this, the position that used to be held by Dorfox into a full-time position and gain ourselves the ability to go after some more grants, do a little bit more enhanced community outreach, help the finance department transition to a more user-friendly, by that I mean public-friendly budget document, something that explains our budget a little bit better than the current budget. As I said, the Finance and Advisory Committee recommended and asked that if we could add in some skill set or experience in the area of, commercial or economic development for the town, that is an area that might need some attention. So I certainly think that's an advisable way to look at it and something that I'm willing to add into the job description. The expectation would be that we would, if you approve this approach, we'll advertise this this week and trying to get somebody on around the beginning of the year, sometime in January, and we will build that into the budget, again, not affecting an actual increase in the budget beyond what we had budgeted this year, just taking advantage of some savings that were found, like as I said, by changing some staff folks. So the Finance Advisory Committee did vote 5-0. Nick Tenson did note that he's generally not in favor of adding staff and staff time, but he sees the value in the fact that this position could hopefully bring us some grants and certainly revenue generation through grants and economic development, and also offer us some capacity that we don't currently have. So,
I do have a question on essential job functions.
okay.
To provide administrative and technical support, including project work and the preparation of meeting agendas and minutes?
So this person, as I said, this is a growth of a position that was in the planning department that Dor was undertaking, and this person would still be responsible for coordinating the activities of the Affordable Housing Trust, the Hamilton Historic District Commission, and the CPC.
So it includes all of Doors. It includes everything Dor did, plus it adds to that.
So there's a little bit of discussion back and forth. So Dor also did work for the Hamilton Development Corporation, but that was not paid through the town. It was under separate agreement between the HDC and Dor. I'm having a conversation with Rick Mitchell and the folks at the HDC to determine if they want to continue that arrangement. I know they currently have some of that being picked up by someone else, and some of that's being done in my office. That can't continue, but not in forever. But for the time being, it's fine. So we'll ferret that out. Hamilton Development Corporation has some ideas of its own about what its future may or may not be, depending on support. So, that's up in the air. But the other three committees that are town committees exclusively will be picked up by this position.
So the other question I had was, if things go the way that we want them to go, the town hall, project will be for the next 3-4 years. How do you see this? Does this role will have anything to do with that or not?
I'm sorry.
That town hall project, town hall construction project.
I think that in terms of coordinating the activities of the CPC and HHDC, which both have a role to play in that, they'll be involved in that. But the town hall building committee is already got, in addition to the professional consultants, the OPM and the architect are already working to try to keep that project moving along. They do have to work with the HHDC and the CPC going forward. So, as I said, this person would have a role there, but we'll leave that with the Town Hall Building Committee and Tim Olson and Patrick Reffett.
Patrick's already on it.
And Patrick's already on it, so.
I would assume you've talked with Patrick about all this and the roles and stuff. And
Patrick helped me redraft the job description.
I was going to say, did you have any input from Dor? I know he's been gone a little bit now, but you were in the kind of process, and as far as kind of what his job
We asked Dor to
encompassed.
provide some, we started with taking Dor's original job description, asking him to amend it to reflect more what he was actually doing.
Right.
And then Patrick and I sat down and started talking about what else we might need in town. And so, as I said, this is where we got to.
And did I hear you correctly, I was in outer space for a second there, that they would also help with some stuff with our budget presentations
Yeah, so
format.
that's part of, one of the things I know that you have it on your agenda for us to talk about financial policy soon. It may very well be on the very next Board of Selectmen's meeting. This person won't be on board yet for that. But that, transitioning a budget document in a community is a very time-consuming process.
Right.
And that's one of the next things up on your list of priorities, or the previous list of priorities that was established. And it's something that both Marissa and I have talked about wanting to get to. But as I said, it's very time-consuming.
Right.
I do not anticipate that it would be done for the FY '21 budget, but we can start to arrange the materials so that it can be transitioned and put
Right.
over after the budget gets passed or into the FY '22 budget, so.
Yeah, I think
it takes a while.
Right, the hardest part of that is getting front-loading all that stuff into that document, and then once you have that template set.
Right, then it becomes easy.
It's easy just to input the new data from it, because
Well, that's part of the reason we haven't, initiated transitioning the budget document. The budget document is created between primarily the finance office and myself, but what we're talking about is a budget presentation.
Right, so as you may remember, Darcy,
So-
a few years ago, we did the community compact, and we got financial policy updates, and one of the things was they gave us kind of a baseline template for improving our document
Oh, yes,
into a
yeah.
more formatted and user-friendly document, so.
The problem is the budget book that we all get, you were on the Finance Advisory Committee for a number of years. You folks have been on the Board of Selectmen, you've been through it, you read it, you understand it now, but
Right.
it's a very difficult document to
Wading into
to
munis
interpret when you
for
first
every
pick it
person
up.
is a
Yeah,
tough
we
thing.
had to do a piecemeal on the FinCom.
So, best practices in the municipal finance world are to transition to either, a Government Finance Officers Association, GFAO, budget document, or something like. And I believe the budget document, the template that was given to you by the state was very similar to the GFAO budget. And so I've seen that used in other communities. We had transitioned to it in Winthrop shortly before I got there, so I was used to working with that document. It is a better type of a document. It's easier for, the average citizen to pick it up and look at it and understand what's being proposed and why. So we definitely want to get to that place, but we're not there yet. So this position would assist with that, so.
Good.
I think it looks good.
No, I would ask for a vote because it is an addition of a half-time position to, from what was approved in the budget. As I said, we're not gonna spend any more money than was approved in the budget, so it's not a financial change, and I did talk about it with the Finance Advisory Committee. I didn't want them to think that I was, cramming something in mid-year and then gonna just spring it on them during the budget process for the next year. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just taking advantage of the opportunity with an opening to try to address other needs.
How much would it increase? This year, there won't be any financial impact, but next year,
So it won't increase the overall budget.
For next year?
For next year, because we're just gonna move the money from other accounts where we had savings this year into that account, and that's how it'll be reflected, so.
And Joe, did you say that FinCom voted 5?
5-0 for it. As I said, Nick smiled at me
Okay.
and said, yes, okay.
know.
I don't normally like this kind of thing, and I told him I agree. I don't normally like that kind of thing either. But I do see some needs, some shortcomings in our ability to kind of meet our needs as a community, and I think that this position could help.
great, all right.
Rosie's looking at me skeptically, so.
I just have a question. What's going on with the Concom agent?
We
We've not
started
talked
advertising it.
about
We started advertising it. It took us a while to get the job description.
Oh, okay.
We wanted to make some adjustments to it. Patrick was out at the time that I started looking at it, so I didn't want to try to, if the position does report to Patrick on a staff time basis. So we got that. We got some feedback from Jim Hankin, who had been in the position, and we made some adjustments to the job description, and it's, my understanding was it was going to be advertised this week. So
And that will be a report to Patrick as well?
it would be a report to Patrick, as it always has been, but the job search process, we're going to ask, Mr. Luongo has already agreed, rather, to serve on the screening committee. So he'll review the applications, help us pick the applicants to be interviewed, and in the first round, do the interviews. And then the finalists will be for me and Patrick to interview afterwards.
I think that Concom will be very relieved to hear that there's an agent coming on board.
We know. I'm very relieved to have an agent coming on board.
Good, good.
Darcy, did you have something?
No, I was just going to make a motion.
Oh, perfect.
Great.
Let's see. I make a motion that we vote to accept the community projects manager position from part-time to full-time, as written on the form.
Job description.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Second.
Second, all right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank
All
you very
those
much.
opposed? Okay.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you for putting it together.
No problem.
A lot of thinking, trying to engineer that position.
Pardon?
I didn't see your vote. It was unanimous.
No,
No.
I voted against.
All right, next up, we have master planning for Hamilton.
Where are we here?
Okay, so basically, this is by way of me informing you that I'd like us to introduce master plan and funding in the budget for the coming FY year. As we're ending the budget process here, I think that it's important to kind of set out what our goals are. I know that we provided somehow, the town did provide some funding to the planning board last year to do the housing section of the master plan. But some of the feedback that wasn't completely supportive of that effort, I think has kind of resulted in the fact that it was a piece of a master plan and not a master plan. And it can be difficult to pull a unified document together when you have different folks working on different things. I'm not necessarily asking for a vote tonight. I'm asking for you all to give it some thought and give me feedback so we can determine how best to present this in the budget. I do think that, and I did talk to a couple of other towns and to the planning board, you know, it might need to be an investment of about $140,000 or $150,000 to do a complete master plan. For a community of our size. We might be able to get it down a little bit based on the fact that so much work has been done on the housing portion. And you have the group like the Open Space Committee out there updating that plan.
Right.
So those are components of a master plan that can
Right,
be.
we've got housing production plan, our housing master plan
And open space
segment, and
committee.
then open space and
You're
rec.
gonna have the MVP, which is outside of
MVP,
master
right.
plan, but it
With
can
the
be
hazard
considered as part
mitigation
of.
as well.
The hazard mitigation, again, normally outside of a master plan, but it can be considered as well. You've got data, you've got input that can be utilized in that. So we may save ourselves some money, but just broad strokes, letting you know, if you want to really start to think about the future of the community, it's been a long time since the town undertook a master planning process. We might want to think about how to invest in that.
Are there grants available for this? And when is this guy get? When is
There is sometimes opportunities to do grants. There's also sometimes an opportunity to work with a group like Mass Development. I brought Mass Development in to do not an entire master plan, but we utilized in Winthrop, we utilized Mass Development to do a downtown redistricting master plan. So it was a master plan for the downtown business district. And we utilized grants from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and a loan from from the Mass Development. Mass Development's loan terms were very generous. They loaned us the money and the
Municipal
staff
loan type
time.
of.
And what they basically said was, if you go through the process and you finish the plan and adopt it, and then having adopted it, you get some economic development, we want you to pay us back out of the proceeds that you get from out of the economic development. So, and that, they gave the town like 25 years to affect the change out of the master plan. So they will eventually be required to pay the $40,000 back to mass development, but hopefully it's due to economic development, and if not, it'll be at the end of 25 years. So either way, they were really favorable loan terms. Yes. And as I said, Metropolitan Area Planning Council can do that. The problem with, and I'll just advise, I love MAPC, I've worked there, I've used them for a number of things. But when you go get grant funds from agencies like that, you are kind of restricted to which consultants you can use.
Right.
You're gonna use MAPC with their dollars, and you're gonna use a small group of consultants that are under contract to Mass Development with their dollars. So we just wanna be careful. If you want us to go in that direction for some or all of the plan, then we're gonna have
Maybe
a
somewhat
little more
limited to
limitation
your
as to who we
pool.
can work with.
How long of a process would you say that?
About a year.
About a year to 15 months, I think, from soup to nuts to get it all the way through. It took us about 15 months to do it in Winthrop, and that was just one neighborhood. but it was the kind of the most densely populated area of town. It was where we were proposing mixed use and a lot of other things that kind of became very difficult to untangle. So about a year to 15 months.
Would there be a committee, master planning committee?
I certainly propose that we would do that. I think that, you know, just asking a standing committee to go and run with it. Standing committees tend to have their mission and their focus, and if you ask a committee like that to do an entire master plan, then they may be focused on their mission. Whereas if we put together a master planning committee, you could pull relevant people from all sorts of.
And I think when we did it previously, we had a committee
Yeah.
as well.
Okay, yeah. So what guidance do you want from us tonight? Just
Nothing else tonight, just, I wanted to introduce the topic, ask you all to think about it, get back to me, let me know what you want. If you all tell me that you don't think this is the right year for the town to make that investment, I can rethink what I was thinking about proposing. I do not, again, this is policy, but something I ultimately would, if you want to go in that direction, would have to implement. So I'm just looking to make sure we have your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I have a thought. So we can come up with whomever we want to help us with this master planning, correct? Do we have to have a particular group help us with the MAPC, I mean, with the master planning?
You know, particular group within the community or outside the
Well,
community?
you're talking about MAPC.
So that's what I said, I only if we went and asked MAPC to give us grant funds, they'd want us to pay some, and then they'd put in some money, but then we'd need to use them, you know, for instance.
Okay.
So if you wanted to go in a different direction, you know, private companies, we're not probably gonna get a lot of breaks from. There aren't any state agencies that are giving you money to work with a private company. And mass development is one that does do some of that. You get some mass development staff time, and then they're, you know, whoever they have contracts with, which limits your pool a little bit. An unlimited pool would be, we think, you know, you're all free to do your own research, call a couple of other towns, see what they paid for master plans, and then call me back and say, I think we should try to hit this number. We could go through a complete RFQ process, put out an RFQ for a municipal master plan for the town of Hamilton, resident population of roughly 8,000 people, and we want it done in 12 to 15 months, and we'll get people that will provide to us their qualifications, and we can, based on the criteria that we set for selection, pick the one that we think is the best match for the town, so.
So I'll just make the statement that MAPC tends to be very development-oriented, and I'm concerned about that. I think that anybody we have, such as some of the consultants who've come in here over the past 5 years, have projected their particular development views. And if we're going to do this, and I think it's time, I agree with that, but I would like to be very careful about whom we decide upon to write this for us.
I fully agree with you, and that's why I stated that number out there that sounds a little high to start with, but it gives us the most flexibility to choose the consultant we want to help us plan our future, as opposed to other options. So.
Yeah, so you would have my full support on an RFQ. I think that's a pretty objective way to go, and that's my thought about that.
Okay.
You know I'm for it. I've had this it's pretty much every time I talk to Joe, I go, when are we doing this? And I've been saying it for a handful of years now. I think the time is right. You know, I started with the townwide survey when I was kind of early on the board. And then that was hopefully leading into some master planning. It hasn't quite happened yet, but we're kind of had a bunch of kind of dominoes falling to kind of move us in that direction. You know, we mentioned the meeting we had with the planning board tonight, our housing production plan, our open space and recreation plan, the MVP, the hazard mitigation plan, our stormwater plan that we're also doing for the state and everything like that. So we've got all these things that are happening, and the longer we kind of wait, the longer that data is obsolete, right? And part of having a master plan is not to get it and then just put it on the shelf and forget about it. It's to actually move forward for where the town's going to be in the next 10, 15 years, and a living document, and work towards that. So I think we're kind of having all these things kind of going along. It would be nice to kind of get the full thing together in one dossier and be able to see a vision for where we're going to be in the next 10 years.
Excellent. So we put that in the budget for next year?
If you want me to, that's what I would, so
I think so.
I'll plan on it, and based on this conversation, I'll plan on doing that. I'm open to more feedback as you think about it over the next days and weeks. Kind of let me know what you think is a number the town might be comfortable with as far as investment-wise. Because 150 does sound like a big number, I know.
Has Wenham recently done their master plan?
I don't know. I don't know. I can find out.
I
May I address the board?
Yes, sir, Duke.
Duke Seaver, Essex Street. I'd like to see downtown, the parking that we have now, maybe a two-level parking garage, or 2 levels and a roof, ground floor, 1 floor, not any higher than the buildings to the left, because with the development that you're gonna put in there, you're gonna need parking. And you can charge them so much a week, or so much a month, or something like that.
Thanks, Duke.
Thanks, Duke.
Does the MBTA own some of the lot behind the Crosbys?
I believe
They
they
believe
do.
the whole lot?
I believe I don't know how much they own, but we can find out.
It's sort of delineated at the end of Crosby.
It kind of goes back right from there.
Right,
I'm wondering
right.
if we could leverage something there.
They have
The
the MBTA police
The MBTA
sitting there.
The MBTA is bleeding money and looking for
Yeah.
every revenue stream possible. I will say that it took huge legislative effort and multiple years for Beverly and Salem
Yes.
to get their parking garages.
Yeah.
And those were both tied to creation of more dense housing and jobs.
Right.
So, not to say
Beverly
that,
has
not to
sure
say that
done
we.
their part.
Not to say that we shouldn't pursue something with the MBTA, but just to say that if we were going to pursue the
Right.
our end of the
They want
bargain
more
would be.
commuters and more.
Well, our end of the bargain would be that we need to be promising a lot more development than I think this town, quite frankly,
Right.
is ready for.
Right.
So, that would be a concern for me.
All right. Next up,
Ow.
review human resources IMA.
So, we did hear back from KP Law. They, the town manager, administrators from all 3 communities, Hamilton, Rockport, and Manchester by the Sea, had agreed to rough language. We gave it to KP Law. They made comments this week. There was one question about being able to share unemployment costs. And they, at first, when I first got the answer, I thought KP Law was telling us that we couldn't write that into the agreement, and they said, no, you can, and we'll put it here, and they gave us some draft language for that, so I think.
Anything about OPEB in there as well?
So it would be all kind of employment costs, so.
So all employment benefits would be-
We're trying to manage, we're trying to institute into the agreement the idea that if the employee separates for some reason and winds up stuck on our retirement or stuck on
Right.
our unemployment, or that we would be able to share that burden with the other 2 municipalities. So have not heard back from the other 2 municipalities. So, but for the most part, they didn't really change too much in here. Some, like I said, some stuff around that and a couple of other minor things to
The personnel
clarify.
board thing and a few other
Yeah.
little minor things.
Little minor things, but I certainly am not asking anybody to take a vote on and sign this document tonight, but if you wanted to take a vote to, tell me to go in a direction, I'd be happy to do that, because I'd like to try to get the other 2 communities to agree to the job description so we can get posted, and also push them to get their boards to give them a green light, so to speak, so.
I make a motion to enable our town manager to move ahead with further negotiations with the IMA for the human resource officer, shared human resource officer.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
And so, Joe, do you see this? I mean, we had kind of a pie in the sky idea for sometime in the next month or so. Are we still on track for that?
So, I think that if I can try to, with your vote tonight, I think I'll have a good case for making to my my colleagues that we could start to work in a parallel where we might be able to get the job description posted and start screening applicants and things, and at the same time really turn up the heat on trying to get the IMA agreed to by the 3 boards.
Okay.
So with these changes from KP Law, I'm going to ask the town administrators in Rockport and Manchester to let me know if it looks good to them, if they're comfortable with it, we'll finalize a document and then get that before all three boards. But I'll bring it to you folks last because,
Well, we're kind of
we're the,
running the
we'd
ship
be the,
to say
we'd be
somewhat.
the
home base.
host agency. So we'd be wanting to make sure that we sign off on it last and we know what whatever changes they may have.
That seems practical to me.
Are in there beforehand. But again, I believe in collaborative hiring processes. My goal would be to organize a committee that would include a representative from each of the three communities to screen and do initial interviews.
Yep.
But the final interviews would be taking place with myself and the town administrators from the other two communities.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, then the last item here is to finalize the town manager evaluation.
So I apologize for taking so long to get back to you. I was planning to have that, you got a document in the email and in hard copy today from me, which is just kind of some of my responses, if you will, to the comments and things that were in the evaluation that you provided to me in October. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to work here in the town. I love it. I'm sorry?
I don't have it.
You didn't have it?
No.
So your response? Your two-page response?
Yeah, it's a two-pager.
Right here.
Like,
No, it's not in my
one
packet.
page? Nope. I will flog.
Oh, yeah.
I will flog Michelle tomorrow. I will not do that. I did not say that. I have a good joking, friendly relationship, working relationship with Michelle. She's been fantastic, so I take back what I said.
All right, thank you, Joe.
So I think that, I wanted to respond. I think that there were a lot of good comments there. I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the things that I could work on. I tried to offer you some ideas of things that I could work on. And I do think that probably at some point we want to set up another meeting to set goals for this point going forward. I have asked in there that we keep the 4 previous goals kind of live, going, because we're still making progress on them. But it's also time to, look at what other things you want me to get done in the next year. So, happy to have that discussion with you as well.
Good.
Are we going to,
It's up to you. I think that normally the process calls for me to respond to kind of the evaluation. I've tried to do that. I've tried to point out where I think that there was some direction being given to me, things that I can work on. I'm trying to recognize that here. If you want to vote to accept my recommendations and either finalize the evaluation or take more time and finalize it at the next meeting, that's up to you.
I'm fine with finalizing it tonight. And just to Rosemary and Darcy, typically the way the process in the review has been, and Joe kind of just said it, is we treat it kind of like the management letter that the FinCom gets from our
bond people?
bond people and all that stuff. They give us, you could be doing better at this, and then we give them a rebuttal while we're working on
Right,
that
right,
kind of
feedback,
stuff. So
yeah.
it's just kind of feedback, and it's showing that Joe's taken proactive steps on some of the things that we might have had some concerns on. So
It's important that he gets guidance from all of us, on which, what we see and where we want to go.
I have just a little comment about, I know that it's not always easy to do, but it really does help to have the documents for meeting just as soon as possible. I really like to be prepared for meetings, and it would really help if that could be maintained as a top priority.
Absolutely. In fact, in one of the comments that I read in that item was to also to try to make those documents available to the public as soon as possible.
Sure,
So with
yes.
your permission, I will start. What we've been doing is we set the agenda on Monday or at the latest a Tuesday. It goes back a little bit and forth before we finalize it. Then usually by Tuesday afternoon, Michelle and I are sitting down and talking about what documents, what materials do we need to support this agenda, and we usually spend about 24 hours or so compiling them and making sure we have everything together. Then we send them to you, and when we send them to you, we send a copy to the chairman of the Finance and Advisory Committee.
Correct.
That was something recent that we added doing once David became the chair, and he asked for it, and I agreed with it. I thought it was a good idea. Just more transparency and just more to keep them in the loop. Given the comment that one of the comments that I had on the evaluation, I think that, with your permission, we would start after notifying you and the Finance Committee, and any other board. So, for instance, you had the Planning Board in a joint meeting tonight. We would inform them and give them the documents as well. And then once all the committee members have the documents delivered to their email inboxes, we'd post them up, we'll post the materials online as well.
That's great. Yeah. That'd be good. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Joe. Really, you've done a great job. Town is lucky to have you.
Yeah, you're like
A challenge for you.
No,
Because the town has been, a lot going on.
It would be far worse if I was in a town of this size and people weren't engaged and weren't interested and weren't
Yes.
letting us know what it is that they wanted.
Yeah.
It makes it way harder to do your job and try and help people, because that's really what we do. Everybody in this building is a public servant. And, our job is made a lot easier by getting to hear what people need from us, so.
And you're very, very welcoming of people, and that makes a huge difference.
Yes,
And
it does.
I think it's really helped to make people feel that their voices are heard, and that's, and for us, me as a selectman, I feel that you're very open and communicative and very transparent, and I appreciate that. We all do. I'm just saying, I especially appreciate that communication.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I make a motion that we finalize the town manager evaluation.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Right?
Excellent.
Does the board want to take new goal setting as a part of an upcoming agenda, maybe the second meeting in
You're
December?
reading
or
my
something
mind,
like that?
Jim.
I know you've already got a lot of things kind of that have been, starting to pile up for the next meeting on the second, so, but maybe right before the holidays, we can all go into the holidays feeling happy with each other if we set some goals together, if that's okay with you.
Is that a Saturday morning session, or is it?
We talked about
You've done it
maybe
in the past, but you don't
switching
have
it,
to.
but we've typically done the Saturday mornings, but we can discuss it when we.
Do it off Monday or something?
Yeah, something.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm willing to discuss it. I would just need to check my schedule because I work every third weekend at Mass General.
Oh, okay,
So-
okay, all right. So to be determined, items for the next meeting, you said we've got it pretty full?
Yeah, I know Sean wanted to talk about,
I got it written down.
Policies.
Fin policies and goal
We
setting.
wanted the public safety team to come in and give an update. We have to set the tax rate.
Water rate.
Water rate, there's gonna be a lot of discussion on water rates, so we're gonna be coming in with a recommendation from Tim to restructure the rate system and make it a little bit more equitable. We have a couple of outliers that are handled differently and probably not fairly. That's not for me to make a value judgment on, it's for you folks to do that, but we'd like to propose a little bit of different, a little bit of tinkering with the rate structure and then an increase to rates based on what we're forecasting for needs.
All I had was I'd agreed to reopen the investigation into the clickers for the town meeting.
I think that's,
Yeah, I can get you that, I can get you that answer pretty quickly, yep, yeah, clickers for
So
town
I,
meeting, yeah.
so I did some research. I had reached out to 3 companies to get more information because there's different technology, different reporting, different price ranges. So I have some information. So we can talk about that. It's probably a few month implementation. So I could tell you what date we need to make a decision by in order to have them up and running by the next meeting. So
All right. And then maybe
that's
we can invite Mr. Bowler to come,
Yeah, seeing
do
as
that
he's
next
going to
week or-
seeing
administer
how
it.
he's gonna be the
maybe we can do a month.
implementer.
Yeah.
Whole month's gonna be. Whatever. Just pick a
Can we
meeting.
do it on the second, Joe?
Yeah, or maybe a month from now.
What
would be
they
better.
call
Or is
You-
that too
you-
much?
If I hear back
might be able to do
Tellers,
Yeah,
Bill, how long would your presentation take?
It'd probably be a half-hour discussion. So because
He
it's
speaks
quite
quickly.
You might be able to get it on the second, I'll put it on
But
there.
I'll let you know if I
tentatively
hear
for the
back
next
from.
meeting
I
and-
need more
and-
information from these companies. Not that I'm getting soliciting bid, but just soliciting information to educate the options.
Sure,
Yep.
that's good.
I'll I'll add that to the list of things to be discussed at the next agenda
right.
setting, and we'll see if it gets in consent.
That's really good.
The only thing I had, and I'd appreciate y'all's feedback on it, is I attended the presentation of the HDC to the planning board about their proposed project downtown. And one of the big issues that came up from the people in the audience, for the most part, was parking. And the planning board at that meeting told the audience that it was really up to the selectmen to figure out parking in the downtown. So I was gonna suggest that we invite Russ to come in and talk to us about parking, what the current issues, challenges are, see if there's anything we need to address.
Right, because the
or-
planning board really, they have in their rules and regs, so many spaces per unit, and they've met that.
They've met
So
that.
that's the end of their involvement in it. The rest is the street parking issue with people who don't want to pay the commuter fee. I know in my neighborhood, they park along Willow Street and stuff like that sometimes because they don't want to pay the fee to
Right.
get on the train.
Right.
And enforcing that parking and stuff like that in our signage downtown, I'm sure
Right.
Russ can answer all those questions too.
Well, you had already asked me to consider having Russ in for a public safety update anyway, so
Okay,
it'd be a
perfect.
two-hitter for him.
Perfect.
That's right, he is coming in.
Perfect, okay.
That's a good idea to have that discussion. Just so you know, the planning board did also require the HDC to do peer review
Yep.
of a lot of their stuff, and we signed the contracts today. So the peer review consultant's been set on go. So he's gonna go do his work. Good, or her work, or whatever. I don't
Their
mean to
work.
don't mean to give it a gender. It's give their work.
May I make a motion? No, you go, you do it.
May I make a motion that we adjourn?
Second,
All right, all those in favor?
the mystery.
Aye.